present here. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to another enriching session of In Tandem Fortnightly Symposia, a forum specially dedicated to fostering meaningful academic dialogue and intellectual exchange. Today's session, titled Translating Words Translated from Regional Languages to English, invites us to reflect on translation not merely as a linguistic act, but also as a cultural, political, and ethical engagement. Today, we are privileged to have three distinguished keynote speakers, each bringing a unique perspective on translation ranging from Dalit texts and regional narratives to cultural memory and making of English literatures. Our first keynote speaker for this session is Dr. A. Vijayaganesh, sir, is going to present in the title Translating the Dalit Text Emergence of Multiple Registers in English. Vijay Ganesh sir currently serves as an assistant professor and head of the Department of English at Patrician College of Arts and Science, Chennai. His teaching and research areas include literary criticism, theory, Dalit literature, and gender studies. His keynote will examine how Dalit text, when translated into English, generate multiple linguistic and cultural registers, challenging dominant literary norms and also opening new interpretive possibilities. Now, I would like to hand over the platform to Dr. Vijay Ganesh, sir. Sir? Dr. Vijay Ganesh, sir?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, I got disconnected. Uh, shall I start now?
Yes, sir, you can.
Okay. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Okay. Now I just straight away get into my argument. Okay. The central argument in translation studies revolved around two things. Revolved around the relation between the text termed original and the translation of that original. Two views can be inferred from this discussion. So one is considering original superior. Second is questioning the very notion of the originality. In fact, if you read some of the theorists, will understand the privileged position. Actually, translation had a privileged position. So that was removed after the advent of printing and the spread of literacy. This led to the emergence of the idea of an author as owner of his or her text. So this idea was further consolidated during the European colonial expansion. And this notion, during the second half of the 20th century, radical movements within literary and cultural studies effected a paradigm shift in translation studies. So as a result, theorists began to give translation an equal status to that of the original text. So I've just tried to discuss the theoretical aspect briefly. As a result, the theorists began to give translation an equal status. So this challenges the notion that while translating, target language must remain true to the source language. To put it simply, lack of equivalence is not a problem. So that we all know. So if we could see the development in the understanding of the act of translation or the process of translation. So now the lack of equivalence is not a problem. No need to match, the source and the target languages. So this gives us a general understanding of the development of translation theory. But taking a cue from this discussion, I will attempt to study the translation of especially Dalit texts into English, especially the implications of the lack of equivalence in the context of translating Dalit texts. Let's say how far translators used this to their advantage. So this is what I'm trying to do it. Right. Okay. So before understanding the development of specific strategies employed by the translators of Dalit texts, it is essential to understand the factors shaping the language in the Dalit text. So that is, I think, most important. So only if we understand this link or the factors shaping the language in a Dalit text, I think we can understand the process of translation. This will also this will expose the difficulty in translation of a Dalit text. First of all, as we know, Dalit writing is a record of lived experience. Uh, it is it can be considered a docudrama because, as we all know, it records the experience and struggles of Dalits, which hitherto have been completely erased from the historical and political text. So that is the primary objective of Dalit writing, as we know, representing their lived experience. So what happens? These themes, the following themes, deprivation, destitution, and despotism, become the dominant themes. So they have an objective, political commitment, and that pushes them to write. So they try to represent an alternative. Something that is alternative to the mainstream writing. Uh, yeah, so that's why. So there is a connection between this and the language that they use. So most of the, so I'm not going to into the details of the aesthetics of Dalit writing. So I think as most of us know, so how Dalit writing differs from the mainstream. So I just highlighted a couple of things. So most of the Dalit authors stay focused on representing the fraught atmosphere prevailing in the village almost entirely through dialogues. So in most of the writings, we could see the action is represented, conveyed through dialogues. Maybe I think they must have thought description of the emotions or description of the setting would be unnecessary diversion from the main events of the story. So this, the attempt to convey or represent the actions through dialogues provides a sense of urgency in every line. So as we read, the action move very fast. Moreover, since dialogues play an important role, conveying the tone and import of the spoken words is important. So on the one side, since they represent the fraught atmosphere, they're very much focused on the action. And so I think the sense of urgency comes into play. Moreover, since the focus is on dialogues or dialogues play an important role, now conveying the tone and import of the spoken words is important. And at the same time, it becomes difficult. So because extensively we could see dialogues are used in the local dialect. And in the case of Bama, a Tamil writer, it becomes even more difficult because in her works, both narrator's voice and characters' dialogues are in local dialect. So, in order to bring the sense of urgency, tone, and importance to the story, Patrician has theorized it. So, even I've just gone through the translator's note because that's where we could see how each translator has dealt with such text. So from their notes, I'm able to theorize this particular aspect. So the translators they have come out with a simple, straightforward language. So now they have different options, but they go for a simple, straightforward language, actually, which alienates itself from the Englishness, if there is anything called Englishness or the standard English prose. Moreover, they reject common colloquialism or Indian English. So this is something new, what we see in this translation. And I think when we say straightforward language, of course, it needs explanation. It looks vague, but maybe I can just quickly discuss that. This straightforward language, when I read the text and try to understand, so how they are able to come up with this kind of language, they actually retain the basic grammatical structure uh, because I mean the meaning has to be conveyed, but they do a lot of modifications, adjustments at the level of syntax, semantics, and style. They go to a greater extent in some cases to make sure the meaning is conveyed properly. In the case of course, I cannot give more examples. Maybe uh, a couple of strategies that the translators use to, uh, shape this, simple, straightforward language. I think that will be enough. In the case of Tamil, it becomes even more difficult because the fluid structure of grammar, as I told you before, it is in local dialect. It also provides, the fluidity uh, that retains the sense of urgency. So now the problem is how to convey this or capture this fluid structure of Tamil grammar and the local dialect and the sense of urgency, and most importantly, the tone of the local dialect. So I would say this flexibility that we see in Tamil is transported into English using the following devices. Slight adjustments they have made. Sometimes it may look like they have uh, deformed the original text, but there is no other option. So one is the use of conjunctions, specific use of conjunctions, punctuation, and breaking of sentences into short units. So this is how they try to retain the sense of urgency. So they have not tried to bring that flexibility by constructing lengthy sentences in English. Instead, they made sure they go for shorter sentences or sometimes punctuations, and they use conjunctions. Of course, I could give examples for this, but anyway, yet another strategy I think I'll to be discussed is transliteration. So this strikes. Okay, so on the one side, they try to come up with a simple, straightforward language where they retain the basic grammatical structure, but at the same time, they do a lot of modifications, adjustments at the level of syntax, semantics, and style. They go to a greater extent to make sure the meaning is conveyed. Uh, right. So the second major strategy I found is transliteration. So this strikes a balance between the cultural knowledge in the source language and the narrative flow in the target language. So we cannot just ignore this. I mean, of course, it is difficult, but so we cannot just talk about in terms of difficulty, but it goes beyond that. So how to strike a balance between the cultural knowledge in the source language and the narrative flow in the target language. So as I told you already, the extensive use of local dialect in a Dalit text forces a translator to retain some of the words as given. So what happens otherwise, the characters and readers will be alienated from the social and cultural sphere of the story. So if we look for direct translation or equivalence, so that will be the result. Quickly, I'll give a couple of examples. For instance, words like machan, ayya, sami, amma, these words defy literal translation. Moreover, sounds like de, da, ele. So these words must also be incorporated into English language as such. At times, the translators have been deliberate in their choice to not use italics for certain Tamil words. So I could also observe that in some cases they italicize the Tamil words to show it is a foreign word, but sometimes they just incorporate the Tamil words. They feel italics keep the Tamil words alien to English. They also hope the reader can come to these words without interference. So some translators, they think that could be an interference, and in the process of reading with the flow, perhaps even they can learn a new word or two in another language. So they take up this strong position, stand that so we won't italicize a few words. So let the readers learn some of the words, maybe the context of its usage. In some cases, it's interesting to note, uh, translation of Tamil words into English leads to decontextualization and depoliticization, and also to some extent a reduction of the thematic significance of the Dalit text, which in turn I would say softens the overall impact of the story. So this is another dimension. I'll quickly give you an example. In the short story Annachi by Bama, a major conflict revolves around the word Annachi. It cannot be translated as sir or brother because it is a very casual, informal, and intimate mode of addressing uh, one slightly elder, but within one's own class or caste. So that's the meaning. So the moment Ammasi, the central character in this story, who belongs to a Parayar community, addresses a landlord belonging to Nagar community as Annachi, the latter retorts, Ennale, what did you say? You called me Annachi. Who is Annachi? And so on. So the village elders, they call for a meeting in response to this allegation. Amasi clearly tells the villagers that he has used the term Anachi as a form of respect and asserts that all humans are equal. So if this word is translated into English, so there will be a misunderstanding of the entire sequence in this story. That is the landlord's furiousness, Village's condemnation, and Ammasi's self-defiance. So it's better they retain the word as such. In some, the simple, straightforward prose in English and incorporation of transliteration into it leads to the formation of, I would say, a new register in English. So something uh, that is not a continuation of the English prose, that has been evolving in the West, or it is neither a continuation of Indian English or even English colloquialism. So this is something new. Okay, so this will be like I just read a few lines. Hey, Machan, tell me what's wrong with what I did. Yesterday I worked in Parasuram Ayya's field and got home early. I had some kulu to eat and then went out again and got on the bus. So this goes like that. So here, A, Machan, those words are italicized. Kulu, Ayya are not italicized. So uh, even the sentence structure, so they try to maintain they try to maintain a simple and straightforward prose instead of complicating or going for a complex structure. And I would say if we extend this to Dalit writing in other languages, we could see the creation of multiple registers in English. So, and also from the translator's perspective, this would give a freedom because I think they need to move from the equivalence theory, and then they need to be a little more liberal in the way they deal with such text. Of course, this can also be seen in other Tamil texts where they even non-Tamil text we could see such expressions. But I would say in Dalit text, the extensive use of dialect and the way the caste structure, is very much deeply rooted in the language. So when we need to, and also it is the political aspect. It is also very much linked with the language that they use. So in that case, we need to be very sensitive to, the very act of translating such text. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was an engaging and thought provoking address from your side. Your insights have given us a deeper understanding of how translation shapes voice and visibility. Once again, thank you, sir. Our next keynote speaker evening is Dr. R.K. JAISHREE KARTHIKA, Associate Professor, Grade 1 at VIT University, Chennai. Her keynote is titled Translating World's Regional Languages, Cultural Memory, and the Making of English Literatures. With extensive teaching and research experience and over 60 research publications, her work spans gender studies, memory studies, queer studies, and medical humanities. Her talk will help us understand how translation connects regional languages with cultural memory and contributes to shaping English literary traditions. I'd like to warmly welcome Dr. JAISHREE KARTHIKA ma'am. Proceed, sir.
Good evening, one and all present here. It's a privilege to address before you today and speak on a theme that is not merely academic, but deeply ethical, cultural, and political. Translating worlds translated from regional languages to English. Well, when we speak of translation, we often imagine words crossing from one language to another. We literally do it. But translation is never just about words.
Can someone give ma'am a call? Whoever has ma'am's number. We'll wait for a minute. Maybe Ramakrishnan sir can. Ma'am's not able to come online. Prithviraj, do you have ma'am's number? Ramakrishnan sir, you can present.
Sure, ma'am. Can I start?
Once again, sir.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Tawhida?
Yes, ma'am. Our next keynote speaker is Mr. Ramakrishnan sir, an independent researcher and translator. His talk titled Translating Region draws from his rich experience as a translator. He has 4 major translated works to his credit, including Indifference, Our Stories, and translations of works by Aringeranna, A. Madhavan, and Dr. D. Ravikumar. Today in his keynote, he would reflect on how regions travel through translation and how the translator plays a crucial role in representing cultural and political context. Now I'd like to welcome Mr. Ramakrishnan sir.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. My topic broadly is translating region. So I'm orienting it to the session's title. And these are the 4 areas I'll be covering during the session. It's basically a history of translating region per se. So the first is the colonial mission during the colonial period. Then there is a nationalizing mission. Then we see how there is diversity in unity. And towards the end, how the aesthetics have been changing along this history. So to put it bluntly, I would say we are living in an era that is perfect for translation. That is, this is the most conducive era in the history of Indian literature for translation. I'll also, this is my argument, and I'll tell you how I'm arguing this through the course of this presentation. I'll start with a couple of examples. One is a Doha by Kabir, and this was translated by Rabindranath Tagore. If you read it closely, a lock of error shuts the gate, open it with the key of love. Thus, by opening the door, thou shalt wake the beloved. Kabir says, "O brother, do not pass by such good fortune as this." So Kabir is known for such small couplets or dohas, and Tagore translated 100 of them just before independence. What Rabindranath Tagore did in this collection was, he as much as sanitized and glorified Kabir for a colonial audience as he translated it. Okay, so Kabir's dohas, just like Rumi's, they also have a sensual element to them. Like the Bhakti movement in South India, this movement of Kabir and Rumi, whatever they followed, had a sensual relationship with God. That's how they dealt with God. What Tagore does here is, he uses a Victorian language. As you can see, I've highlighted those particular words, thou shalt. All of these translations of Rabindranath Tagore has these words, thee, 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 thou, thine, and archaic English usages that were glorified in English poetry. So Tagore follows this path and uses such language in his translation. We'll look at another translation, a Tirukural. Okay, this is Kural number 436. About how a king should be, okay, how a leader or a king should be. Faultless the king who first his own faults cures, and then permits himself to scan faults of other men. This was done by G.U. Pope. G.U. Pope was a Christian missionary who worked in Tamil Nadu. He translated all of Tiruvalluvar's Kurals into English. And one significant feature of his translations is that end rhyme. For a long time, colonials, when they looked at the East, when they looked at the Orient, they saw it as a mystic land with a lot of values, a lot of philosophical values that were much needed in the West. So they translated all these aspects. It could be Japanese, it could be Chinese, it could be Indian. They translated all these with a colonial mindset. So for them, a couplet should rhyme. A couplet must feel like a couplet, must feel like poetry, only through these features. So we are familiar with Tirukural, we are familiar with its poetics, which is completely stripped off. The message is then parceled in an English poetic form. That's what G.U. Pope has done here. If you look at the message, it is, the king who first cures his own faults and then permits himself to scan faults of other men is faultless. That is the sentence structure. But G.U. Pope twists it around in a very Western sentence structure. Faultless the king who first his own faults cures and then permits himself to scan faults of other men. Then and men rhymes. And of course, it's a very Yoda-esque sentence structure. Now, these two examples are given here to show how literature was first translated. First thing is in the choice. What is fit for translation was decided by people higher up. It could be Tagore, who was a Nobel laureate, or it could be these colonial officials who saw what was fit, what knowledge system was fit to be translated into English. So a very narrow scope of text was only translated in the beginning. And these canonical texts like Shakuntalam or any of Kalidasa's works, Bhagavad Gita, Quran, these were the first texts to be translated, only texts of canonical status. But then comes the Sahitya Academy, Sahitya Academy has its roots in the colonial period itself. The idea for it was served in 1944 when the British government wanted to institute a knowledge system that collects texts from regional languages and then makes them visible for the whole nation. Okay, but this was done with the colonial system in mind. But when it was instituted in 1954, Sahitya Academy stands for the National Academy of Letters. Letters as in literature, anything textual. And the Sahitya Academy's motto was recognizing Indian languages and literature in those languages. So right now Sahitya Academy recognizes 24 languages and regional literature from those languages. The objective of the Sahitya Academy was to kind of cultivate a sense of nationalism. That is, pick literature from different regions of the country, different states of the country, and show how they all reflect a national sentiment, an Indian sentiment. So in fact, Sahitya Academy's mission was kind of integrating these states to show that these multiplicities, these diversities form a unique image, a single image of India. And the Sahitya Academy also instituted a translation initiative, translating between regions, between states, and translating all these selected texts to English. Now, if you look at Sahitya Academy's objective very carefully, you see that a certain type of texts only get selected. They cannot be too regional. They cannot show the individuality of just the region. They also should contribute towards national integration. So such a narrow worldview of things was a part of, or is a part of, Sahitya Academy's selection process. And therefore, the nationalizing mission has to be accomplished only through such focused scrutiny. This is how Sahitya Academy kind of establishes the unity in diversity, the concept of unity in diversity. Therefore, what you see in the texts selected by the Sahitya Academy for the awards, it could be Yuva Puraskar or even the Sahitya Academy Literature Award, Translation Award, all these texts kind of contribute towards a single image of India, and therefore you get a homogenizing effect. That is, all states are similar in some aspects. That is the idea you get. For a foreign reader who kind of chooses these English translations and reads, you will get the idea that these states are all kind of similar. But what happens in the 90s especially is you start seeing the diversity pronounced. Emergence of sub-regional voices, that is dialectical voices. In Tamil Nadu especially, if you can see, you can think of Karisal literature, you can think of Neithal literature, even Chennai Tamil. Literature from multiple locales emerge in this period, and they gain significance. Now, what is challenging about this is the question of dialect. You cannot just translate it in Victorian English. All of the text cannot be translated into Victorian English, or even an Indian English that R.K. Narayan, people like R.K. Narayan floated. So the problem of dialect came to the fore with the emergence of these sub-regional voices. And of course, the rise of Dalit literature that Dr. VIJAYAGANESH covered before me. Dalit literature, when it came to the fore, when it spoke about the problems of one minority, it came with its own language, its own register. And that had to be translated into English uniquely. That problem also arose, showing a different side of India that was not exhibited before by the Sahitya Academy. And of course, this was also the period where foreignization became a norm in translation. Until then, when you translate a text into English, you make it sound as comfortable for an English reader as possible. But then foreignization as a concept, as a rule, became a norm in translation. So you start translating Amma as Amma and not as mother, as R.K. Narayan would have done. Things like that. You transliterate words. You do not mind leaving idiyappam as idiyappam and not turning it into a noodle-like dish. Okay, such things. You leave kanji as kanji and not as broth. When such practices become common, the diversity is more pronounced. Now, this is not an integrated India. This is not a unified India that you get out of these translations. You see a lot of diversity. A literature from Karisal land doesn't sound the same as a literature that was canonical before that comes out of Tanjavur land. Okay, works of Tija are very different from works of Kira, even in translation. So such possibilities, such diversity, even within Tamil Nadu was possible because of translation in this period. And this diversity was made pronounced more and more with the bending of English. Now, when you read Aravinda Diga, for example, okay, you have several Indian English writers right now, and their Englishes are different, right? You see Nisim Ezekiel, Aravinda Diga, you find a different flavor of English. You find a different flavor of English in Vikas Swaroop. You find a different flavor of English in Salman Rushdie. These different flavors are also reflected in translation. So the change in English basically denotes the multiplicity of voices. This is my fundamental argument of this session. The multiple Englishes that you read in translation coming from different regional languages basically corresponds to the multiplicity of voices that are finding avenue today. So it's not just a canonical text or canonical range of text that they translated today. There is a diversity. You can choose any text and translate it in the current scenario. So many voices are finding avenue. One big reason is, of course, the digitization of the world. Texts are finding easy avenues outside. You need not go through print medium to reach your readers. Once you reach the readers, then it automatically garners attention from there. So multiple voices find exposure today. With that, the English in translation also finds a lot of modifications. I'll finish this with a different example. The same Kural that we saw before in G.U. Pope's translation was translated again. The whole of Tirukural corpus was translated now by Thomas Hitoshi Priyakshima about 4 or 5 years ago. Now his translation is completely different. His has a little Tamil flavor also. Discarding his faults and discerning those in others, what fault can any king have? Now you see, there is an alliteration in this particular translation, discarding his faults and discerning those in others. This alliteration is also a part of the aesthetic of the original Kural itself. Now what Thomas Hitoshi Priyakshima has done here is, he has focused on conveying the Kural as simply as possible, but reflecting an aesthetic of the Tamil original Kural instead of following a Western aesthetic in the translation. Now, another example, this will show how much English has changed in translation. This is a prose work, a collection of short stories by this author named Muhammad Khadir Babu. Okay, a Telugu short story writer. His short stories were translated recently by D.V. Subashri. Okay, now in this translation, you find a unique flavor of a mix of Telugu and English. This is a small passage from that book that caught my attention. No sooner were the words out of her mouth. Now this is a very English structure. No sooner were the words out of her mouth than Kanduri Murli Gadu, Kandula Malakundarao Gadu, Goda Lakshmi, Parvati, and S. Manasa stood up taka taka taka. Okay, taka 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 ninnanga, something like that. Okay, stood up taka taka taka. These are all the clevers in my class. Our Ramadevi teacher believes they can do any kind of work in a trice. Meanwhile, my heart was pounding, guba guba guba. Okay? We can see the resonance even in Tamil. Bakku bakku nadichittu, we say no. Something like that. And such liberties, such flexibilities can be done in English right now. You see this translation and you wonder how such a beautiful structure, no sooner than that structure was combined with such Telugu names, and that sentence ends with stood up taka taka taka, a very Telugu or very South Indian onomatopic sounds also coming. This blending of a foreign tongue with our own tongue is possible in this day and age because we are able to bring out so many voices today. Now, this changing aesthetic is why I argue here that this is such a perfect time for translation. You can choose any text, you can translate it as you see fit, and you can also justify it in today's world, which may not have been possible in Tagore's age, where predominantly English readers who were used to English sensibilities were reading these texts, and you had to do it for them. Now, the reading public has also widened, and what is fit to be read, what is fit to be translated has also changed a lot today. That makes today an exciting age for translation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the reflection on the translating region, which actually highlighted the responsibility of the translator in carrying not just stories, but entire cultural worlds across languages. Thank you, sir. Our final and third keynote speaker for this session, Dr. K JAISHREE Karthika, Associate Professor, Grade 1, VIT University, Chennai, will present on the topic, Translating Worlds, Regional Languages, Cultural Memory, and the Making of English Literatures. Ma'am, I'd like to hand over the platform to you.
Good evening, one and all present here. It's a privilege to be before you today and speak on a theme that is merely not just academic, but deeply ethical, cultural, and political. Translating worlds, translated from regional languages to English. When we speak of translation, we often imagine words crossing from one language to another. But translation is never just about words. It is about worlds crossing worlds, histories, memories, silences, our own emotions, resistances, and the ways of being human. Today, I invite you all, faculty as well as the research scholars, PG students, to think of translation not as a secondary or a derivative act, but as a creative, transformative, and world-making practice. So I'll be just discussing 5 points under this issue. Number 1 is translation as world-making. See, every language, not only English, it carries a world within it. A regional language does not simply describe reality, it constructs reality. It shapes how people understand family and their relationships, caste and community, about their own land, labor, love and loss, gender, body, and their own beliefs. These beliefs could be social beliefs, custom beliefs, or it could be even political beliefs. When a text moves from a regional language into the universal language English, it does not merely change the linguistic cloths. It enters a new epistemic space. Translation, therefore, is not a bridge alone. It is also a border, a negotiation, and sometimes a battleground. English, as we know, is not a neutral language. It carries histories of colonial power, global circulation, and institutional authority. Translating regional literatures into English, thus, it raises an important question. So, this is one question that I put forward for you to ponder. Whose world is being translated and for whom? Whose world is being translated and for whom? Point number 2, from margin to center. That is from the border to the center, to the point of contact. The politics of visibility. For centuries, many regional literatures, for example, Tamil, Malayalam, Telugu, Kannada, Marathi, Bengali, Assamese, Urdu, and countless oral traditions were considered local, minor, or limited in reach. Translation into English has undeniably played a role in bringing these literatures into national syllabi, global readerships, international awards and recognitions. But visibility comes at a cost. Often, regional texts are simplified, universalized by removing the cultural specificities. A Dalit, for example, just for example, to illustrate, a Dalit life narrative, a tribal song, or a women's oral testimony, it risks being read not on its own terms, but through the expectations of an English speaking, often very elite audience. Thus, translation can empower, but it can also erase. Point number 3, the translator as cultural mediator. This brings us to the crucial figure of the translator. The translator is not a shadowy presence behind the text. Rather, the translator is a reader. Okay, before you translate something, you have to read the entire primary source, the whole text. Then you become a writer, you take up the role of a writer. A cultural mediator, you mediate things between this language and that language, or from this world to that world, the other world. Sometimes you even turn out to be an activist. You give voice for the voiceless. You raise issues that prevails in the other world and you bring it to this world. So every translation involves choices. Once again, I'm putting forth a few questions for you. What remains untranslated? If I'm a translator, I do all these jobs of reading, writing, being an activist. But what is the thing that I don't translate? What remains untranslated? What is explained through footnotes? What are the things where I need the help of footnotes? What is being explained through footnotes? What is domesticated? What is being very much customized for the convenience of the translator? And what is allowed to remain strange? Now, when you read some portions, you feel it is very odd, it is very peculiar. Why it is allowed to be, not allowed to sound so very peculiar? What is the reason behind? For example, when I use a Tamil word like Thali, Anmai, Uir, and when I translate this, do we replace it with an equivalent English word? Or do we allow the word to travel as it is, carrying its cultural weight? Anmai. Can anyone say the equivalent English word that immediately that comes to your head? That you're immediately able to think? Anmai? Masculinity?
Masculinity.
Okay. Tali? It is said the holy thread. Do you think it is an equivalent word that carries that cultural significance, cultural weight? Holy thread. Weir. For example, when you go through some romantic novels, especially Jayaganthan's novels, when there is a conversation between the couple, okay, and there is a dialogue, a love dialogue between the husband and the wife, and they use the word weir. How would you translate it? Can I use the word soul? Can I use the word soulmate? As a translator, am I doing the job right? So these are the few questions that we need to think. Therefore, translation is basically an ethical act. So when I do this translation, I need to have some ethics and values so that I don't misinterpret the meaning, nor I make the word don't carry its cultural significance. Here, Lawrence Venuti reminds us of the danger of fluency. When translation becomes so smooth that it hides the difference. In contrast, many contemporary translators, they argue for visible translation where cultural friction is not erased but it is acknowledged. Such a friction is acknowledged. I openly admit as a translator that I am not able to find an equivalent word for the word thali. So what I do in my book when I translate, I just put the word as THALI within double quotations. So here, that kind of a friction, that kind of a conflict, I don't try to erase it. Instead, I acknowledge it. Point number 4, gender, caste, and subaltern voices in translation. One of the most powerful contradictions and contributions of translation has been the recovery of the silenced voices. For example, translations of Dalit autobiographies, women's life narratives, cure studies, cure writing, indigenous oral traditions. All these have radically altered what we actually considered as Indian literature in English. Yet, we must ask, who translates all these texts? The Dalit autobiographies, or a woman's life narratives, or a queer writing, or it could be indigenous oral tradition. And when that person translates these texts, from what positionality, with what power relations? With what power relations? A woman's suffering narrated in a regional language, for example, Tamil, say, risks becoming a spectacle of pain in English if not handled with care. Similarly, caste experiences embedded in local idioms cannot be fully grasped without cultural literacy. Translation must therefore resist the temptation to flatten lived realities into neat, marketable stories. We cannot be decent all the time. Fifth, the very last point, orality, performance, and the limits of translation. Many regional traditions are oral, performative in the sense they take up the stage, and also communal. Example is folklore, ballads, street theatre, ritual songs, and storytelling traditions do not exist merely as texts. They live through voice, gesture, rhythm, collective memory. So how does English translation capture all these? For example, the cadence of a folk song, the silence in a lament, the embodied energy of performance. Often it cannot, at least not fully. But instead of seeing this as failure, we might see it as an invitation to experiment with different forms, to blend the translation with annotation, performance, and multimedia, to acknowledge this loss as part of the process. So translation is not about perfection, it is about relation, the relation between the two worlds. So to conclude, let me return to the title, Translating Worlds. When we translate regional languages into English, we are not merely carrying texts across linguistic borders. We are negotiating power, preserving the memory, challenging the hierarchies, and imagining the new borders. Translation reminds us that no language is small, No story is local, and no world is unworthy of being heard. In a time of growing cultural homogenization, translation becomes an act of resistance, a refusal to let worlds disappear. Let us therefore translate with a greater sense of responsibility, creativity, and courage. Not to make all voices sound the same, but to let their differences speak. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity given.
Thank you, ma'am. That was an insightful and engaging keynote on your side. Your talk brought together many of the key ideas we have been exploring today: translation, memory, and the making of literary worlds. Before we move towards the closing, we would now like to open the floor for a discussion session. You may direct your questions to any of the speakers of this session.
Yes, I think all the keynote speakers spoke of their relevant. I'm Srilata, right? And all three keynote speakers spoke with great relevance about what they were speaking, and they highlighted what we need today. I mean, the need for trans. There was a time when we read a whole lot of world literature in English translation, not knowing that they were Russian or Czech or any other. Okay, and maybe those days that cultural differences didn't make a change. Even it was novelty when I started reading RK. He wrote about something very close to our hearts, our place. He used many things, of course, simple English to make it clear to the readers who are mainly British. Raja Rao made put in words in his what's that? The corner house Murti and all. I forget the name of the text. Okay, for the first time, Indian writing started sounding like Indian writing. Then, of course, we were happy to read Tagore in his translation. When I read Kural's translation, was G.U. Pope. So I was, being a person of the 60s, from the 60s, we were comfortable with the language, as he says, of thee and thou and thine. Those things were. Today's children will moved away. The language has also evolved, and the texts are all. I mean, individual people, the lesser fortunate people, all of them have given their voices, and all those voices have to be recognized by us when we read their text in translation. India has to be translated to India. So when I was reading Mahashweta Devi, I was irked when I read one book, that is Choti Munda and His Arrow, which spoke in a different register from the rest of almost all the other translations of Mahashweta Devi was just normal English. We could just, where the translator made it think that the person speaking was a Dom or some other person belonging to particular communities. But the language wasn't different. But in Choti Munda and His Arrow, it irked me. But thinking on it, she had to use that different language. To show that the language of activism, she was trying to change the way people looked at it. She was a mainstream writer using, the writing for the voiceless people, making their voices heard. So translation has so many functions, and all of you in theory, all of you brought in all these things. And I think our students, as they read texts, will realize. Recently, I read one Malayalam novel, in Malayalam. The Tamil translation, I was able to understand. I mean, it was perfectly translated. And the third, I read the English version also. The Day the Earth Bloomed, with Manoj Karo's. And the third one was actually translated by the Bloomsbury Group, and it was meant for a larger audience. It's a very poetic account. The other two exactly translated the Sangam age that Manoj Karur had in the language of the Sangam age, Malayalam, which did not have any of the Sanskritization. So that was translated. When it was translated into Tamil, it was perfect because Tamil has that, right? He used a different register even in Malayalam. He used the language differently to show that it belonged to a different age. It's the Sangam age when Malayalam did not have any influence of Sanskrit. So I think it is what also the publisher needs. The audience to whom, as Jaishree has just pointed out, I think the needs of the publisher, the world to whom which is being addressed, the world that is being addressed, the readers, right? And all these count when translate. You've done, all three of you together, I think, have given our students a very comprehensive view of what translation is of VIJAYAGANESH. Thank you.
My observation is directed to Dr. Ramakrishnan. You were talking about language decolonizing, sort of the decolonized text, no? Decolonized translation. So do you see a new idiom emerging? I've often thought of this, Kaal Sudtani Pottu Vandirkiya Tamil. Have you put hot water on your legs and come? So how much is translatable? How much can we take? Can we carry an idiom from one language to another? Could we create new idioms? And I was thinking of words like "ayu" coming into the English dictionary. So could you comment on that? And could you educate us on that? Dr. Ramakrishnan is not there?
No, I think he's not in call, ma'am. Maybe I'll
Okay,
just check.
any of the two speakers can take this question. Either of the two. Dr. Karthika or Dr. Vijayaganesh, either of them. Ma'am, would you like to go first? Doctor.
I think she's there.
She's not in the call, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I'll
Yes.
just come. Yeah, actually, even while working on this discussion, maybe I didn't mention it in my presentation. Translating the local expressions in a text, there is an expression. ஜோசியத்துல செருப்பால அடிக்கணும், செருப்பால தான் அடிக்கணும் அப்படின்னா hit it with the shoe அப்படியே they translated in English. அது மாதிரி sometimes and the direct translation. So I've seen the translators, they directly translated maybe a kind of a new expression we find in English. Sometimes they just translate the literal the meaning, not the entire. For example, ஒன்னு எட்டுலையும் சேர்க்க முடியாது, எழவுலையும் சேர்க்க முடியாது. So they just leave those words, எட்டு, எழவு. So we cannot handle him this way or that way. அந்த மாதிரி they translate. அது ஒரு strategy. So I've seen sometimes they just directly translate the expression into English. I do not know the impact of that because if I should hit your prediction with the shoe, Abdida, I don't know how that the context is will be
Yeah, I
translated.
heard people say you deserve a slippering.
Mm-hmm.
No, Sherpa Adikino. So how a person who's not from this culture, what would they make of it? Is slippering, um, acceptable, and is it there in the dictionary? Should check.
Okay.
So a dictionary again comes up. The importance of the dictionary.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, just one more example, and somewhere they need to change the words entirely. No, I just wanted to share my observation. So when I was reading, I could spot the strategies. I mean, the different ways translators deal with such local expressions. In just one more example, ஒரு இடத்துல வயிறு அப்படின்றது வயிறு ஆக்சுவலி இட்ஸ் ரெஃபரன்ஸ் டு ஃபீட்டஸ் பட் தமிழ்ல வயிறு அப்படின்னு யூஸ் பண்றாங்க பட் இங்கிலீஷ்ல தே யூனோ கரெக்டா ஃபீட்டஸ் அப்படி ஸோ equivalent word use பண்ணா the meaning will change there. We cannot say that as stomach there because the context from the context we could understand vairu actually means fetus in the particular context of the story. Adu irukku. That is one.
It's a tightrope walk. My personal view on this is it's a tightrope walk. We shouldn't do disservice to either language, either to English or to the regional language. The other day, a student was saying, "This is so weight." She meant heavy. This is so heavy.
Okay.
And we corrected her. Okay, so she was. If you take that as innovation, and you allow it, when that is definitely wrong to say this is so heavy, so weight instead of saying this is so heavy. So I think where there needs to be understanding of the aesthetics of both languages.
Yes, ma'am.
Post and target language, yeah.
And I think you said something about the dictionary. I didn't.
The dictionary. See, for example, IO is in the dictionary. I heard somewhere that IO is now in the dictionary. So maybe the dictionary could also be a guideline about what is acceptable and what is not.
But I would say actually, when I had a discussion with one of my professors, sometimes the usage, I mean, when we regularly use a particular word, that gets into the dictionary.
That's
that
true.
also happens most of the time. So he said, am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, okay. For example, car. So while writing even in Tamil, sometimes we use car, bus, magilundu. So that may not be very familiar. Even Tamil people may not be familiar with that word magilundu. So he said, he himself is a translator. So he said, it's best we go for the word car. The people are very much familiar with it. So I think, it's a tricky part. I mean, I don't think we can have some guidelines, but so or I don't know whether we can theorize it or.
I think experience, all this comes with experience.
Yes.
What doesn't sound bad? While, I mean, the word that doesn't sound bad, but it's very close to what the cultural meaning of that particular word in the source language, I think will do. That's what I found I told you, with my reading of the English translation. It's a very poetic account. The English translation of that book I was speaking about, The Day the Earth Bloomed, right? It is so good, the reading. Reading that, I never felt any different. And he hasn't almost some words just go, like as in Tamil, it just is translated like that. But otherwise, since the source text itself is very poetic, in Tamil, and when it's, from Malayalam, when it's translated into Tamil, it was still poetic and it was still relevant. The words didn't change. Whereas in English, I was just wondering how they would do it. I did a little bit, but I found my translation. Before I knew the book had a translation, I translated it was tilted. It couldn't. So the only way was when Devika translated, she did it in a she's historic. There is history also there. And so she is a historical person. For her also, I think it was one new, it was a new venture. But it is so poetically translated. So it depends what the text needs. No? If it is raw, if you have to translate Perumal Murugan or Bama or some such Dalit text, you have to know that, or the Karisal, and you have to know that particular idiom and what it stands for. Sometimes what we use may not be what we understand as the essential, unless you know that particular line. Even if you know Tamil, it's not enough. You must be familiar with the usage, if in that particular area. So I think if it reads, it does well, it's fine. That's what I would say. Like all translations did for us once upon a time, Russian and other things, right?
That's what, Srilata, I was thinking, whether this generation would enjoy R.K. Narayan. So,
They do.
They do?
They do. Yes, they do. Many people like him. There is something quaint about him, him and Lakshman. So I think that's what they like. We felt comfortable.
Okay, then going further back, Tagore, the thee and the thou.
If it is I would say, because I belong to that generation.
That's what I'm saying, this generation.
No, that thee and thou, they will take it as a religious text. And it is true, right? And if it's a religious text, all of us are used to some kind of religious text, right? Even in the Tamil, your Tevara, all those old texts have a classical ring on it. And I think this gives that classical, that's all. I feel text, HS's translation is perfect for Tagore. Whereas I don't like many of the other translations that have come out after Geet Malya and other things. Right? It doesn't sound so good as maybe as good as Geetanjali. It's a sounding and maybe how you take it doesn't matter. As long as it makes sense.
Dr. Jayashree, thank you for that paper. Presented with much clarity. You seemed in full command of your field of knowledge. And it was very well presented. And for me, it was the idea of ethics. I never thought about the ethical part. Political, yes, but that was an interesting observation. Oh, Dr. Ram is back.
Hi, ma'am. Sorry,
Okay.
some family issues here.
we were just talking about the new aesthetics.
Yeah, I joined exactly at that point, ma'am, towards the end.
Yeah, Illa,
Sorry.
we were saying that I'll give you this. See, for example, my generation, we would use idioms like carrying coals to Newcastle. Newcastle ke ponadilla.
Right.
And that's not part of our lived experience. But we were given idioms and phrases and what is the other one? Similes and all that in school, as cool as a cucumber.
Right.
So all these things. So now, do you see a new idiom coming into English? A new idiom, even that the Western world is consuming. A new idiom from our world. This our words from our world going into their world, and vice versa. Of course, that the colonized world, their words came into our world, but our words going into their world.
Our words are going into their world, yes, as we can see through these dictionary entries every year, a lot of these words are going in, yes. But when it comes to idioms, not so much.
Not so much.
Not so much. Our language doesn't affect their language as much, but that tradition of sticking to English idioms, sticking to proper English idioms is changing now. That is, Indian translators who translate regional works to English, they don't stick to foreign idioms as such. For example, a leopard doesn't change its spots. It's not what we do anymore. We simply say you cannot straighten a dog's tail. Nayi vala nimutha mudiyada is a Tamil idiom. So, we don't go for a leopard cannot change its spots. Instead, we translate this idiom so that it resonates with our readers. At the end of the day, we don't have Western readers, or we don't have many Western readers who we cater to. At the end of the day, we still focus on Indian readers. Maybe if we are translating a Tamil work to English, we are looking at other Indian states who may consume this work, or people who cannot read Tamil in Tamil Nadu. That's still our reader base that we are targeting.
It also, the political side is also there, Dr. Ram. I think Western audience would be interested in Indian Dalit writing. That much I know. So
academically, yes.
Yes.
Again, that's a very minor audience we are talking about. An academic reader in the West who was interested in Dalit or even oppressed classes around the world, they'll be focusing on these texts. But it is still a very minor population we are talking about. Not enough to transfer our idioms and words to.
Not enough to transfer, yeah.
Yes.
But the word chai. Chai, for instance, is one is in the Western market also. You can order a chai. So that word has gone. So through commerce, also it goes. Some words go.
I think it goes more practically through world experience rather than through books. That's why chutney is part of their vocabulary now.
So can we wind up? Any more questions?
No, I think Americanization had a lot to do with, erasing our, this kind of English idioms out, sending it out. I think that's one, ever since American literature became popular with our people, because most of our people were in America, and they highlighted that.
True.
English now accepts everything, I think. Most of this, I told you, Bloomsbury and others, these books, Indian books, are translated by them. Are published by the Bloomsbury group and a whole lot of terribly English publishers. So, and that I think goes in for research as well. I don't know whether people read English novels except those those that come from India now, proper English novels, except those novels and works that except that comes from India. Very few Englishmen writing English in proper. We stopped with Muriel Spark and a whole lot of that group, and I think in the 60s. After that, very few writers. I think all the prizes are being won by either Americans or or the Indians. So that way, that also maybe the kind of works they take, the relevance of the works they are talking about. What I mean is in popular parlance. So in popularity, we don't have many. In those days, we raged about only English
novel is kind of
It's
waning,
British.
yeah.
So we have, are we okay with closing or any more discussion?